Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Real Estate Rundown podcast. My name is Andrew Jones. I'm a partner here at Wright Hassel in the commercial real estate team. I'm really pleased to be joined today by my fellow partner, Richard Dundee. Hi, Richard.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. Not bad. I've
Good.
got a coffee in front of me, Andy, so I'm ready and raring to go.
Excellent. So Richard heads up our private client wills and trusts offering. And today I wanted to talk to Richard about, in particular, trusts in the context of property, particularly commercial property and development trusts. So, Richard, what is a trust and why is it relevant to commercial and development property?
It's a very good question. It's almost like I gave you that question.
Well, let's kick off.
So what's a trust? Well, lots of lawyers will describe trusts in lots of different ways, but the way that I have described it for the last 13, 14 years is a treasure chest. It's probably the easiest way to think of it. Mm-hmm. It's a treasure chest. I'm going to put something in it and I'm going to close the lid. Yep. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand the keys to an individual or individuals, and they're going to make decisions about what happens with those assets moving forward. There are good reasons why a person might want to do that. It might be for protection. It might be for tax. It might be simply for ease of management.
Okay.
But they're really useful things to consider.
So you're putting your property in that treasure chest, effectively.
Yes. Okay. And the sort of sole purpose of that is you're shifting legal ownership from your name or from the name of multiple sort of investors into the name of a separate legal entity over here. This treasure chest now holds it.
So what type of trusts are usually used in commercial property and development property?
So there's lots of different ones.
Okay.
In sort of the general world of trust, there's lots of different types. But when we're talking about commercial property and the deals involved there, we're either looking at a fairly straightforward bear trust.
Okay.
And if I was sitting
with
nothing
to do with the animals in the woods.
Oh, you've ruined the joke. So I had a colleague previously, whenever we mentioned bear trusts in podcasts, he'd make that noise.
There we go.
And now I can't help myself, which gets really awkward with clients. So the idea of a bear trust, other people call it absolute trusts, but ultimately I'm putting this property in this trust over here, and I'm going to hold it for you, Andy. Yep. So rather than it being mine, it's now in a trust for you. It's see-through for tax purposes, so the taxman will treat it as belonging to you, but I might wrap up a few sort of age contingencies in there. I might say, well, you can't have it until a certain age.
Okay.
A lot of people, especially in this area, will do that for income tax splitting.
Okay.
So whereas I might own a property in my name, I might choose to place it into a trust for the benefit of my wife, who may be on a lower tax rate than me.
Okay.
And as long as it's reported correctly, it can work quite well.
Okay. Is there any other sorts of trusts that you come across in?
There are. So discretionary trusts are quite common, which is the idea of me putting assets, property into a trust, handing you the keys, and you've got complete discretion as to who benefits and when.
Okay.
So none of the people that I necessarily list or want to benefit have any say as to how much or when. That's entirely up to you. Now that can be really good for protection purposes because none of the people that are listed legally own that asset until you say they own it, Andy.
Okay.
So if one of them goes through a sticky patch, be divorce, bankruptcy or the like, creditors would find it difficult to say that asset belongs to that person over there.
Yeah.
The other type of trust that's quite common here is unit trust. Now, a unit trust is sort of a mix of both.
Okay.
So discretionary or bear. The logic being, though, that you and I might pool our resources as joint investors. I may own 10 of the 100 units. You may own the 90. Really good for income splitting, really good for tax distribution. And it might be that we then subsequently divide those units further down the line if other friends, colleagues wish to come on board
and buy those units. Yeah. Okay, that's great. You touched on tax there, particularly income tax. Is there any other tax advantages or reasons from a tax point of view why you might want to set a trust up?
We could speak for hours about this, Andy. We really could. And I've been told I've only got about 10 minutes,
Absolutely.
So I'll keep it short and sweet. Can you tell I'm getting excited already?
Wow, tax is pretty exciting stuff, isn't it?
I bore my wife senselessly. It sends her to sleep, which she appreciates. Okay. So income tax is normally the predominant reason why people use trusts in this area for that income tax splitting. But also the fact that I'm moving an asset into a trust that's no longer legally mine can have, in certain circumstances, inheritance tax benefits,
Okay.
especially if I'm looking to move those assets, those properties into a trust for the benefit of others,
Right.
be that my children or grandchildren. I may be comfortable enough to be able to forego those assets, wave goodbye to the capital or the income, but I still want to retain an element of control,
Right.
be the key holder,
Yes.
let's say. So a bit of flexibility, a bit of control. In certain circumstances, the value of those assets I'm moving can fall outside of my inheritance tax estate down the line. Capital gains tax as well. It may be that I've got properties pregnant with gain
Okay.
that I wouldn't necessarily
Explain that one.
Oh, yeah. Pregnant being the idea of if I purchased a property in 1980 for 10 grand, because you could have done back in the 1980s.
Absolutely.
And who didn't? I'm joking. A lot of people did though. And now it's worth £300,000.
Yes.
If I was to dispose of that right now, and say hand the proceeds to my children, I would have to pay a significant amount of capital gains tax if I hadn't been living there.
So the expression pregnant means you've got a lot of capital gain in that asset.
Waiting to be born, I suppose.
Yeah.
The logic being.
Until it's sold, I suppose you haven't realised it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
What I could do is I'm desperate to get that asset to my children to provide them with the security to get the inheritance tax benefit of moving it out of my name. If I transfer those properties into a trust, I could hold over in certain circumstances, which is just a way of deferring capital gains tax until the next time that it's sold. So I might not necessarily want to just give it to my children or sell it for their benefit. I might want to start the clock ticking for inheritance tax, but I want to retain an element of control over those properties. But I'm concerned about capital gains tax. That's
so
where
it's the best of both worlds a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I want to start the clock for IHT, but I don't want to pay capital gains tax. What can I do? The solution is use a trust for the benefit of the family and hold over your capital gains. It's really clever.
Good stuff. Are there any sort of challenges or difficulties or disadvantages of putting properties into trust?
There's always pros and cons. And if anybody, an accountant, lawyer, IFA ever says to you, "Oh, do this. This is great." And
there's no downsides whatsoever.
No downsides. Run away.
Okay.
Is the answer. So here, the obvious downside of using trusts is the cost of setting them up. A lot of people are worried about the ongoing costs of running trusts. It's quite a common theme I find with clients that sit in front of me. Now, unless you appoint professional trustees, the costs are actually minimal, ongoing. You and I, Andy, could be trustees on our trust and we could run it without the assistance of an accountant or a lawyer. So ongoing wise, we should be fine. Unless, of course, we want the assistance of an accountant or a lawyer to do bits and bobs. And that is recommended at times. Initial setup fees, well, of course, there's the advice. You want to get it right. A lot of people try and budget and they get stung by the tax man down the line. So it's best to take advice, sit down with someone who knows what they're doing and get it right. The other disadvantage, I suppose, would be the ongoing reporting requirements. So trusts are not particularly well liked by the taxman for all the reasons we've just discussed. The idea of being able to move assets into a safe environment and the taxman doesn't legally know who owns them. Now, what that's meant is over the years, the taxman has become quite strict in reporting requirements. It used to be you only had to tell the taxman that a trust existed if there was a tax liability each year, capital gains tax, income tax. Now you have to report the existence as soon as it's been made. So it's not as private as it once was, but that TRS, Trust Registration Service process, is 10 minutes on a computer, Andy. So a lot of people use that as a stick. Don't make a trust, it's really complicated, there's lots of reporting, but actually there's not.
As long as you've registered initially, then you've ticked that box.
And like most things, take some advice at the beginning, get sorted from the start, and it becomes significantly easier. It's when people try and muddle through and go, "Oh, I'll give it a go myself, I'll sort it." They get 10 years in, the taxman sent them a snotty letter, and then the costs ramp up trying to unpick.
I guess getting it right from a control point of view as well, if you're used to managing that property, you putting the tenants in, dealing with the tenants, and then you put it into a trust. Unless you set it up right, I guess there's a risk that suddenly you're not in control. You're now not dealing with the tenants, and you'd have to make sure you've got the documents in place to deal with that.
Absolutely. The other disadvantage, I suppose, of using a trust is, whereas if I own my portfolio of 100 properties now, Andy, which I don't, and if you've got 100 properties, give to me, I'll happily
I'm sure
accept.
some of our clients have.
Absolutely, and good on them. So if I own my 100 property portfolio now, I've got complete control over that. It's mine.
Yes.
I could decide tomorrow to sell it to you for 100 million, bish, bash, bosh, job done. Move to Belize, live the happy life. If I transfer it into trust, I can't be the sole trustee. It's just not how trusts work. I've got to have a second trustee with me in order for things to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm giving away an element of control.
You're bringing somebody else in, really.
Absolutely. Now, a well-drafted trust may allow me the power to hire and fire my co-trustee. So it would become an administrative burden of getting rid of them, putting someone on more favourable, but it's still a process. So a lot of people are worried about using trusts because there is that sort of give and take. But if you appoint good people as your co-trustees, then you shouldn't have to worry about that problem.
Got you. Do you ever come across trusts in joint ventures on property development?
We do, and once again, it's a way of allowing sort of investors to pool funds and to ensure control can be shared amongst investors, but also ensure that income can be split by dividend in the controlled and fair manner. It's quite common, and we recommend it.
So particularly where there might be different ownership parcels of land where on a development site, or you want to bring family members in or something like that.
Absolutely. And it can make it administratively less burdensome. We find it a lot with our farming clients, where they may all be farming different parcels of land, but they want one trust to control and own the lot.
Development land.
Exactly. And tax-wise, it might be more efficient doing it that way than, say, them all individually running their own accounts and reporting as separate entities.
Got you. That's useful to know. I've also heard of family investment companies, but what are they and how are they different to a trust?
As Ron Seal would have said, it does exactly what it says on the tin, Andy. It is a family investment company. So
a limited company.
Limited company.
House,
private company set up by the family. So me, my wife, my children might decide to set up the Dundee Family Investment Company today, Dundee Limited. I think it's
like a solid investment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds very Scottish. Got no Scottish in me. I don't know where it's come from.
The cake, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe marmalade. So crocodiles. So I could set up the Dundee Family Limited, and I could transfer my assets into it. Now, the tax advantages of using a family investment company is I would be paying corporation tax, taking dividends, allow for the profit to be retained and reinvested in the purchase of more, rather than me paying my rate of income tax on the income that I'm receiving.
So you're sharing it amongst the family potentially, and sharing all those tax bands as well.
Exactly. And there's two other advantages of using a family investment company, and they're becoming very popular. In the same way that I absolutely love trusts, and I do love trusts, and I bore everyone to death talking about trusts, the one downside, as I've just mentioned, is that you lose an element of control with a trust.
Absolutely. In
that you and I, Andy, have to be co-trustees. It can't just be me.
No.
And although I trust you greatly, I'm still reliant on you agreeing with me.
To do the right thing.
Exactly. Giving me all the income. In a family investment company, it comes down to directorships. So we can set up a family investment company. I could retain control by being a director. You, Andy, and others may just be shareholders. And we can draw out different alphabet shares of that family investment company. So in terms of voting rights, I could retain those, but I could allow capital rights, distribution rights, to go to my children or to you, Andy, or to others. So it's a way
there's a fair amount of flexibility built in there if you get it right. Really
flexible. And the important thing is getting it right from the start.
Of course.
If we start giving everybody voting rights from the beginning, then,
you've lost the control.
I've lost control. So what I might want to do is set up the Dundee Family Limited, retain voting rights to me, make myself and my wife the directors, but give my children non-voting shares to allow some distribution of capital and income to them during our lifetimes.
Okay.
And I can then forward move more shares to them as I go on, which will provide inheritance tax benefits down the line.
And I'm a property lawyer, and one of the advantages I think of having a company as the legal owner of a property is that if you do need to change things in the future, it's a lot easier because that's all done at a corporate level rather than transferring legal title.
Absolutely.
I presume that is one of the advantages of that.
It is, and this is where our really good corporate team jump in. They have experience dealing with FICs from ground up, so with the preparation of them and the management of them, the changes of the articles and memorandum moving forward.
Yeah.
So Wright House certainly can help people with this really, really quite clever and becoming more popular option.
Yes. I mean, there's obviously some challenges with them, which we'll probably touch on maybe next time, Richard, when we talk. But just to finish off, I'm just interested kind of what property assets are typically used for family investment companies?
Good question.
Okay. I mean, is it often used for commercial property? Can you use it for residential property, or is it
I think
anything?
A bit of both, Andy, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any, and this is where my corporate team would normally jump in and go, Richard, come on. Shh.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I believe all assets can pass into a family investment company. There's no sort of yes or no.
No, it's not like I'm thinking a pension fund where you've got those restrictions with you can't put residential investment property in, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do not believe there's any sort of criteria.
No, that was my understanding. Richard, that's been really helpful. Thanks for a real sort of rundown on and trusts and family investment companies. I think there's more to learn about that. I think we've just scratched the surface. So hopefully we'll have a part 2 maybe later on in the year.
I hope so.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Andy.
Cheers.